You ever have a moment where time just stops? Like the room goes quiet, your ears start ringing, and you know right then that whatever happens next is gonna change your life forever. Yeah. That moment happened to me in front of 50 people. Crystal glasses raised, cameras flashing, and my own father smiling like he was about to win an Oscar. He didn't whisper it. He didn't pull me aside. He didn't even hesitate. He stood up at the head of that massive table, tapped his glass, and said, "I'm proud of all my children, except the loser, sitting right here." Laughter. Applause. My brother clapping like he just watched a mic drop. My stepmother smiling like Christmas came early. And me. I didn't cry. I stood up, walked straight toward him, placed a plain white envelope on his plate, and said, "Happy Father's Day." Then I walked out. And when he opened that envelope, I'm told the scream echoed through the entire mansion. But before I tell you what was inside, you need to understand how we got here. My name is Sabrina. I'm 32 years old. I'm a public school teacher. And according to my father, that alone makes me a disappointment. The event was supposed to be a celebration, Father's Day sure, but really it was about him. Victor Prescott. Real estate tycoon. Self-made millionaire. Boston elite. The kind of man whose house gets featured in magazines and whose ego needs its own ZIP code. The Prescott estate sits on 12 perfectly manicured acres. Iron gates. Imported trees. A driveway longer than my patience. People call it elegant, I called it a cage. Growing up, I learned early how the family ranking worked. At the top, my older brother Marcus, 35, custom suits, luxury cars, groomed since birth to inherit the empire. Dad's favorite, Dad's mirror. Then came Clarissa, my half-sister, 27, my stepmother's daughter. Never worked a real job but somehow had a title at the company. Instagram influencer vibes, designer bags, zero accountability. And then there was me, public school, 10-year-old Honda, dresses from clearance racks. A job that helps kids instead of padding bank accounts, in Prescott language. That made me dead last. Every time I visited the house, I parked around the corner, behind the gardener's shed, not because anyone told me to, but because the one time I parked in the circular driveway, Marcus laughed so hard he nearly choked. "Did you Uber in that thing?" he said. "Or is it a rental?" It wasn't a rental. It was paid off, and I was proud of it. But pride didn't count in that house unless it came with a price tag. The invitation came 3 weeks before Father's Day. Not a letter. Not a text. A video call. My stepmother Helena appeared on screen wearing a cream designer jacket, and that same gold bracelet she never took off. The one Dad gave her to remind everyone who won. Her smile was perfect. Practiced. "Sabrina, darling," she said. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." That pause. "Yeah, that was on purpose." She explained that Dad was receiving a major business award. Big deal. Press would be there. Important people. Forbes included. "We need you there," she said. Need, not want. They didn't invite me because they missed me. They invited me because an empty chair would raise questions. "Of course," I said. She smiled wider. "Ah. And try to dress appropriately. Your father's reputation is on the line." The call ended. I stared at my phone, knowing exactly what that meant. I wasn't family, I was a prop. I should explain why I kept showing up at all. When I was 10, I won a school essay contest. First place. The topic was my hero. I wrote about my mom. She had died 5 years earlier, but writing about her made her feel alive again. I ran home with that certificate like it was gold. Dad was in his office. "I won," I said. "First place in the whole school?" He didn't even look up. "Writing?" he said. "And how much money does that make?" I didn't have an answer. Then he called for Marcus. "Scored 2 goals today," Marcus said. "That's what matters," Dad replied. That night, I tore up my certificate, but my grandmother found me crying and whispered something I didn't understand until much later. "You look just like your mother." She said it like a secret. If the Prescott house was a prison, my Aunt Ruth's place in Vermont was freedom. She was my mom's sister. Librarian. Lived in a tiny farmhouse filled with books and warmth. Every birthday, she sent handwritten cards. Real words. Real care. And every time we talked, she hinted at something she was holding on to. "One day," she'd say, "when you're ready, I'll show you something your mother wanted you to have. I never pushed. Part of me was afraid of what I might learn. Fast forward to the night of the dinner. 50 guests, crystal glasses, expensive wine, jazz music, cameras everywhere. I sat at the far end of the table, where I always sat. And when my father stood up to speak, that's when everything cracked. That's when he called me a loser. And that's when I realized they didn't plan to welcome me. They planned to break me. But what they didn't know, I had already found the truth, and it was sitting in my purse. You know that feeling when someone says, "There's something you need to see," and your stomach drops before they even finish the sentence. Yeah, that's exactly how it felt when Aunt Ruth pulled the wooden box out from under her bed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind. 2 months before Father's Day, I drove up to Vermont for spring break. No agenda, no drama, just a weekend to breathe. The kind of quiet you can't buy: trees, dirt roads, no cell service if the wind's right. Aunt Ruth was waiting on the porch like she always was, holding 2 mugs of tea like she'd been counting the minutes until I arrived. "You look tired," she said, hugging me tight. "Not work tired, life tired." We sat by the fireplace that night, the same way we always did. Books stacked everywhere. Old floorboards creaking. The kind of place that feels safe without trying. I don't know why, but everything spilled out of me. The dinners, the insults. The way my father looked at me like I was a bad investment. The way my stepmother talked to me like I was a liability. And then I told her something I'd never said out loud before. "I think they're trying to push me out." Ruth didn't look surprised. She just nodded slowly and said, "I was afraid of that." That's when she stood up and walked toward the bedroom. "I think," she said, not turning around, "you're finally ready." The box was old. Real old. Dark wood, hand-carved flowers along the lid. The kind of thing you don't throw away because it means something. "This belonged to your mother," Ruth said. My throat tightened. "She gave it to me before she died. Made me promise I wouldn't give it to you until the time was right." "Right for what?" I asked. Ruth placed it in my hands. "For the truth." Inside were photographs I'd never seen. My mom, young, laughing. 11 a way I didn't remember. No forced smiles, no tension behind the eyes. Just joy. There was a leather journal beneath the photos, worn, loved, and at the very bottom, an envelope. Sealed, written in my mother's handwriting. "For Sabrina. When she's strong enough." I couldn't breathe. "I don't know what's in it," Ruth said softly. "She never told me. Just said one day you'd need it." I didn't open it. I couldn't. I put everything back, hands shaking, and drove home the next morning with that box sitting in my passenger seat like it had a pulse. Back in Boston, life didn't slow down. The Prescott machine kept moving. Friday dinner rolled around like clockwork. Same table, same performance, same interrogation. Marcus bragged about a multi-million-dollar deal. Applause. Clarissa talked about a rebrand campaign. Compliments. Then silence. Dad looked at me. "Sabrina," he said. "Anything worth mentioning?" I swallowed. "One of my students just got accepted into BU on a full scholarship. She's the first in her family too." Marcus laughed. "And what do you get out of that? A thank you card?" Dad didn't even blink. "So nothing that benefits this family." Helena smiled sweetly. "Some people just aren't wired for success." I said nothing. Because I'd learned that silence was safer. After dinner, I walked past the conservatory and heard Helena's voice. She was on the phone. And she didn't know I was there. "It's exhausting pretending to tolerate her," she said. "She's too desperate for Victor's approval to notice what's happening." My chest tightened. "The plan's simple," Helena continued. "If Victor pushes hard enough at the Father's Day event, she'll crack. Publicly. Then she'll disappear on her own." I pressed myself against the wall, heart pounding. No inheritance drama. No confrontation. Just gone. The floor creaked. She turned. For a split second, panic flashed across her face. Then the smile came back. "Oh, Sabrina, I didn't hear you." I nodded. Sounded important. "Just work," she said smoothly. "Run along." That's when I knew. Father's Day wasn't a celebration. It was a setup. That night, I dreamed of my mother. Not blurry memories, real ones. She was brushing my hair, counting each stroke like she used to. "Mama," I asked, "why don't I look like Daddy?" She paused. "Because you look like me," she said. "And that's a good thing." Then footsteps. My father in the doorway. My mother didn't flinch. "She's our daughter," she said. He didn't answer. He just walked away. I woke up crying. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. My mother hadn't just loved me. She'd been protecting me. From something. From him. And whatever was in that envelope, it was about to change everything. There are some truths that don't sneak up on you. They kick the door in. That envelope sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. 3 days of pretending I didn't see it. 3 days of walking past it like it wasn't holding answers I'd waited my whole life for. 3 days of knowing that once I opened it, there was no going back. On the third night, I couldn't sleep anymore. No TV. No phone. Just me, the box, and the kind of silence that feels loud. I sat on the floor, broke the seal, and unfolded the letter. My mother's handwriting was soft, familiar, and the first line stole the air from my lungs. "My dearest Sabrina, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And I couldn't protect you anymore." I had to stop right there, because suddenly I wasn't 32. I was 5 years old again. Sitting on the edge of my bed while she tucked me in, promising she'd always be there. I kept reading. "There's something I should have told you while I was alive. But I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of what Victor would do." My heart started racing. "Victor is not your biological father." I stared at the page. Read it again. Then again. My hands started shaking so hard I dropped the letter. All those years. All those looks. The distance. The resentment. It wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It was because I wasn't his. I forced myself to keep going. Before I met Victor, I loved another man. His name was James Whitfield. He was gentle. Kind. He loved me completely. We were going to be married. James died in an accident 2 months before our wedding. My chest felt like it was caving in. When I found out I was pregnant with you, my family panicked. A child out of wedlock would have destroyed everything they'd built. Victor needed our land for his developments. So they made a deal. A deal. Victor agreed to marry me, to legally adopt you, in exchange for the property rights. I felt sick. He promised to raise you as his own. He lied. Tears blurred the page. I watched him resent you every day, not because of anything you did, but because you reminded him of the deal he made. I tried to protect you. I argued. I begged. I threatened to leave. I wasn't strong enough. I'm so sorry. I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed like I hadn't since I was a child. 2 years of trying to earn love from a man who never intended to give it. It wasn't personal. It was business. Inside the box were 2 more documents. An adoption certificate. Victor Prescott's signature, dated before I was even born, and a blank space where biological father should have been. The second document made my breath catch. Instructions, names, contacts, and 1 line underlined twice in my mother's handwriting. "One day, you will need proof." The next morning, I called Daniel. Daniel wasn't family. He was a teacher like me. The kind of friend who brings coffee when you're drowning in grading and never asks for anything back. "I need you to promise something," I said. "Anything. I'm going to tell you something that changes everything." He listened. Didn't interrupt, didn't judge. When I finished, he exhaled slowly and said, "So what do you need?" "A DNA test." Getting Victor's DNA wasn't dramatic. It was easy. That's what hurt the most. At the next Friday dinner, he left his jacket on a chair. I waited until no one was watching. A few hairs from the collar. That was it. 2 weeks later, the results hit my inbox while I was sitting alone in my classroom. Probability of paternity 0, 100%, conclusion excluded 0. Not a chance. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the weight I'd been carrying my entire life finally lifted. I was never the problem. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to expose him online. I wasn't going to beg for explanations. I was going to tell the truth. In the same room where he humiliated me, in front of the same people who laughed. And then I was gonna walk away. I wrote a letter. Short. Direct. Clean. No insults. No accusations. Just facts. And one final line: I release any claim to your name, your money, and your approval. When Father's Day came, the envelope was already sealed, sitting in my purse. Waiting. And when my father called me a loser in front of 50 people, that wasn't the moment I broke. That was the moment I finally stopped caring what he thought. You ever leave a room knowing it's about to explode behind you? That's what it felt like when I walked away from that table. No running. No shaking. Just calm. The kind that only comes when you're finally done begging. I could feel every eye in the room tracking me as I crossed the marble floor. Heels clicking. Heart steady. The jazz band had stopped playing. Even the photographer hesitated, camera half raised, unsure if he was witnessing drama or history. My father's voice followed me. Sabrina. Sit down. I didn't. You don't walk away from me. He snapped. I paused at the doorway. Not because I was afraid. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need his permission. Then I stepped outside. I didn't see what happened next. But I didn't have to. Because by the time I reached the end of the driveway, my phone started vibrating like it was about to break. Later, I pieced it together. Victor Prescott stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. Helena leaned over his shoulder. Open it, she said. It's probably nothing. She's always dramatic. He tore it open. The DNA results were on top. The color drained from his face so fast my cousin thought he was going to pass out. What is it? Helena demanded. Victor's hands started shaking. Then came the adoption certificate, his signature, dated, undeniable. Helena grabbed the papers. Probability of paternity 0, she read out loud, in a room full of people who love gossip more than champagne. And that's when my father screamed. Not yelled. Screamed? No. This isn't real. His glass shattered against the table. Red wine bleeding across white linen. People started whispering. She's not his daughter. Adopted her. So he's known the whole time. The truth moved faster than anyone could stop it. Helena panicked. That was her mistake. You adopted her, she blurted. Victor, why would you? Silence. Dead silence. 50 people heard every word. And once something like that is said out loud, you can't put it back. My Aunt Margaret stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. So let me get this straight, she said. You married Eleanor knowing she was pregnant. You adopted her child, and then you spent 30 years punishing that girl for it. Victor tried to regain control. This is a private family matter. Private. Margaret snapped. You called her a loser in front of everyone. Business partners started shifting in their seats. The Forbes photographer started typing. Then Marcus spoke, and that one hurt him the most. You knew. Marcus asked, staring at the papers. You knew she wasn't your biological child. Victor didn't answer. You spent my entire life telling me she was a disappointment. Marcus said. That I had to work harder because she was dragging us down. His voice cracked. She wasn't even a Prescott. Marcus stepped back. You turned me into a bully. Clarissa was crying now. Mom, she whispered to Helena, did you know? Helena said nothing. That was enough. Clarissa grabbed her purse and left. And then my aunt dropped the final bomb. Eleanor didn't die by accident, she said. The room froze. She was driving to her sister's house because you threatened to send Sabrina away. She was leaving you. Victor looked like he'd been hit. She called me that night. Margaret continued, crying, saying she'd rather die than let you hurt her child. No one spoke. No one moved. Victor Prescott, the man who owned rooms like this, had nothing to say. By the time I got home, my phone was full. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. I deleted most of them. Then one came through. From Claritside. If you'll let me explain. I looked out my window. She was really there. For the first time, the power wasn't theirs. It was mine. You'd think a man like my father would have bounced back fast. People like Victor Prescott don't crumble. They pivot. They threaten. They lawyer up. But what he wasn't prepared for. The truth spreading faster than his influence. By Monday morning, the story wasn't family drama anymore. It was risk. And rich people hate risk more than they hate bad press. The first call came from one of his partners. I didn't hear it live. But I heard about it. Victor. the man said. I can't be associated with someone who publicly humiliates his own child, adopted or not. That deal, frozen. By lunch, 2 more partners backed out. By Tuesday, the Forbes article dropped. Not about his award, not about his empire, but about his character. The headline didn't yell. It didn't have to. It simply laid out the facts. And facts hit harder than insults ever could. Helena moved next. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She filed paperwork, legal separation, asset protection. Because when the ship starts sinking, people like her grab lifeboats, not loved ones. Marcus resigned. No press release. No drama. Just one sentence leaked to the business journals. I don't know who I am when I'm not trying to be my father. That sentence did more damage than my envelope ever could. And me. I went to work. I taught kids who didn't care about Prescott money. I drank bad coffee in the teacher's lounge. I laughed with Daniel. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for permission to exist. Clarissa kept calling, every day. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just listened. Finally we met. A diner, sticky tables, refillable coffee. The kind of place my stepmother would never step foot in. I was raised to compete with you, Clarissa said, not love you. I nodded. So was I. We didn't fix everything, but we stopped pretending, and that mattered. Victor called once. Left a voicemail, no apology, just rage. I didn't respond. Some doors don't deserve reopening. A month later, I stood at my mother's grave, sunflowers, quiet, truth. I know who I am now, I whispered. And I meant it. You don't realize how heavy something is until you finally put it down. For most of my life, I woke up already exhausted. Not from work. Not from stress. From trying. Trying to prove I mattered. Trying to earn a seat at a table that was never meant for me. Trying to become someone my father might finally respect. Once I stopped trying, everything got quiet. And in that quiet, I met myself for the first time. The strangest part wasn't the anger. It was the absence of it. I thought I'd be furious after Father's Day. Thought I'd replay every insult, every laugh at my expense. But instead, I felt light. Like someone had finally told me I could stop running a race I never signed up for. I stopped going to family dinners. No explanations, no goodbyes. I blocked Helena's number. I muted Marcus's emails. Not because I hated him, but because healing doesn't happen while reopening wounds. Clarissa stayed. Not because she was perfect, but because she showed up without asking for forgiveness she hadn't earned yet. That mattered. Daniel noticed the change first. You're different, he said one afternoon while we were grading essays. Better? I asked. Free, he said. Like you're not apologizing for taking up space anymore. I laughed. He wasn't wrong. At school I started speaking up. Not aggressively. Not defensively. Just honestly. When administrators dismissed student needs, I pushed back. When parents doubted my judgment, I stood firm. I stopped shrinking. And funny thing, people listened. One afternoon, a student stayed behind after class. "Ms. She said, nervous. How did you know teaching was what you wanted to do? I didn't hesitate. Because it matters, I said. Even when no one claps for it, she smiled. And in that moment, I felt something click. This was success. I went back to Vermont with Aunt Ruth. We sat on the porch, watching the trees move in the wind. You look lighter, she said. I finally believe my mom, I replied. Ruth smiled. She always knew who you were. That night, I reread my mother's letter, not through tears, through understanding. She hadn't been apologizing, she'd been arming me. Victor tried one last time. A letter, handwritten, short. I did the best I could. I folded it once, then twice, then put it away. Because sometimes, the best, still isn't enough. And that's okay to admit. I wasn't a Prescott. I wasn't a disappointment. I was a woman who survived emotional neglect, manipulation, and silence, and still chose kindness. That's not weakness, that's power. There's a lie people love to tell. That healing means forgiveness. That closure requires a conversation. That peace only comes after everyone apologizes. That's not true. Sometimes peace comes when you finally say what you need to say, even if the other person never changes. I didn't plan to see my father again. Life has a funny way of ignoring plans. 3 months after Father's Day, I got a call from a number I hadn't seen before. A lawyer. Polite. Professional. Careful with his words. Victor Prescott is requesting a private meeting, he said. No press. No family. Just the two of you. I almost laughed. Requesting, not demanding. That alone told me everything had changed. We met in a quiet office downtown. No mansion. No staff. No audience. Just 2 chairs. 2 coffees. And 32 years sitting between us. Victor looked smaller. Not weak. Just stripped of the armor that money usually provides. He didn't stand when I walked in. Didn't hug me. Didn't pretend. That was new. I didn't think you'd come, he said. I didn't think you'd ask. I replied. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he spoke. You humiliated me. I nodded. You humiliated me for 3 decades. He flinched. Progress. I gave you a roof, he said. Education. Stability. You gave me obligations, I said calmly, not love. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Because for once, I wasn't emotional. I wasn't defensive. I wasn't asking him to understand. I was stating facts. I spent my life thinking I was the problem. I continued. That if I worked harder, earned more, became quieter, you'd finally see me. He looked away. I wasn't asking you to be my father, I said. You agreed to that. That landed hard. He finally said the thing I'd waited my whole life to hear. I didn't know how to love you. I believed him. And for the first time, that didn't break me. I'm not here for an apology, I said. I'm here for clarity. He nodded. You don't get access to my life anymore? I continued. Not because I hate you, but because I finally respect myself. He swallowed. I won't challenge anything, he said quietly. No claims, no inheritance. I smiled. I already gave it up, I said. Freedom's worth more. When I walked out of that office, I felt complete. Not because he changed, but because I had. Family stopped being a word I feared after that. It became something I chose. Sunday dinners with Ruth. Late night talks with Clarissa. Friends who showed up without conditions. Love without transactions. I didn't replace my father. I outgrew him. There's a weird moment that happens after the storm, when the noise dies down, the chaos fades, and you're left standing in the quiet, realizing you survived. Not just the event, but the years leading up to it. I used to think legacy was something you inherited. A last name, a bank account, a house too big to feel warm. I was wrong. Legacy is what lives on after the power disappears. And my father's legacy, it was fear. Mine was freedom. I kept teaching. Kept showing up for kids who needed someone to believe in them, before the world told them they weren't enough. One afternoon, a student wrote in an essay, my teacher taught me that success isn't about winning. It's about not quitting on yourself. I cried in my car after reading that. Not because I was sad, because I was proud. Clarissa and I aren't perfect. We're real. Some days we talk about nothing. Some days we talk about everything. We don't pretend the past didn't happen. We just don't let it decide the future. Aunt Ruth still sends handwritten cards. Daniel still brings coffee. And my mom. She lives in the choices I make now. In every boundary I set. Every time I choose peace over approval. I don't know what happened to Victor after that. And for the first time, I don't care. Because the truth is, I was never the loser. I was the one brave enough to walk away. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever worked yourself into exhaustion trying to earn love that was never offered, if you've ever been labeled too much or not enough by people who benefited from your silence, hear this. You are not broken. You were just playing by rules designed for you to lose. And the moment you stop playing, that's when you win.